Good afternoon. My name is Ariel Stolz, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Caribbean Green Technology Center. Today, presentation, I'd like to talk to you about our center, as well as how we're involved in sustainable materials management. So the mission of the Caribbean Green Technology Center is to help develop, promote, and implement the use of green technology. Our goal is to use this to improve sustainable development in the territory and the well-being of all its communities. So we have some focus areas and to which you can see here: disaster risk reduction, energy, water and food security, and the focus of today's webinar is sustainable materials management. So how we do this is through collaboration with different government agencies. One of those, which we will talk a lot more about next week in the following webinar, is the waste characterization. And so this study is where we took a sample of residential waste over the course of a week and looked at which waste streams are most present in our waste. And so we will be presenting the findings of this report next week. We also love to involve our students at UVI, whether this is in research projects or data collection or literature reviews, but also we are outreach to the community, and you can see here some art projects at the Ag Fair that reuse materials. And at our core, we are a research center, so we do data collection and analysis, as well as research that we hope will assist in sustainable materials management. So one of those, you can see here, surveying the bin sites around the territory and mapping them in order to look at their proximity to population centers. We are also working on developing plans for the USVI and assisting in developing these plans. The main one is working with VITEMA on the Hazard Mitigation and Resilience Plan, which I'll talk about more in the next slide. But we also assist and attend discussions on the USVI Debris Management Plan, which is in the making or being updated right now. So the Hazard Mitigation and Resilience Plan is traditionally looks at all the buildings in a region, documents how it might be impacted by all the different hazards and how much damages might occur to those buildings. But we really thought that we need to take it a step further because when a disaster happens, not just buildings are impacted, people are impacted, and people are impacted by not being able to access the services that they need, whether that be emergency response, healthcare, food, shelter, water, energy, and we think waste management is right up there with it. And so in our plan, we first take a deep dive into how the system works, so we can really understand how it can be impacted by different hazards and how the service can be impacted, not just the infrastructure, but also the operations. And so then once we have identified these challenges, we look for opportunities, strategies, and recommendations that will increase the resilience of the system so that the service is more readily available to people during the recovery from a disaster. And so finally, with these recommendations in the plan, being put in the plan, it increases our eligibility for funding. So just wanted to touch on some preliminary insights from solid waste from stakeholder interviews. So the first is that during hazard, yes, the infrastructure can be impacted, but the main challenge is really all the excess debris that's generated by the disaster itself. And We really saw this in 2017 hurricanes, and getting, that under control really helped us feel a sense of normalcy again. And so it's really important to recovery. Uh, the next insight is that VI waste management has difficulty planning for these events because solid waste is not prioritized in the USVI government. So it's underfunded, uh, VIMA is understaffed, and they have difficulty managing their assets because they depend on a lot on contractors. Solid waste under any conditions is challenging, not just for the Virgin Islands, but worldwide. But it's even harder for small isolated islands because we cannot capitalize on economies of scale. And in addition, we have to repeat each effort on every island. Um, and and transportation, whether it's between the islands or further to facilities, maybe in the US or abroad, this is very expensive and makes things just more complicated. Also, it's really difficult for waste management to generate revenue because waste disposal has been a free service, and it's hard to make someone pay for something that used to be free. And even though it's considered free service, it's very expensive to maintain. It's not free. And it's especially hard with adhering to environmental regulations, which are really essential for community health and well-being. And finally, there are many grassroots efforts that have popped up to tackle the lack of different waste management or sustainable materials management options, which are really commendable and exciting. However, there's still this lack of coherence, and many projects are not sustainable over time because they depend highly on volunteers, or they are dependent on temporary funding sources that eventually run dry. And so the public may find it hard to get reliable information on which efforts are still happening, where they are, how much they can take, what's the scale of their operations. And many of these projects are just too small for the enormity of the issue. I talked a little bit about the solid waste system, but I think that I need to fit it into the bigger context to really talk about resilience. And so in a society, we have these pillars. This is from the federal government. And so, there's health, there's economy, there's education, our values. And in order to have these functioning society, we need infrastructure. So we need energy, we need transportation, buildings, water, communications. And I'd like to add that we need solid waste, or we need sustainable materials management. You can see when I said it's not prioritized, even at the federal level, it's not on the chart. So these systems, they depend on each other. They're interconnected and interwoven. When one fails, many fail. It cascades. And so I think that it's really important to see the connections here even when thinking about one sector. And so traditionally, many agencies are encouraged to work in silos, but collaboration and cooperation is essential, especially in the future. Technology is continuing to change our environment to make us more connected. And there's also external pressures of climate change or other natural disasters, which can surprise us and shock the system. And so because of this complexity, UVI is creating a certificate to train the next generation of system operators to understand system resilience engineering and kind of tackle some of these problems. And so that's coming soon. So finally, I'd like to talk about some of our plans for the future in sustainable materials management. So first, at UVI, we'd love to set an example. This is not just CGTC, but also like to mention the work of VIMAS in their glass recovery project, and VI EPSCoR with marine debris cleanups and lots of community outreach and education. Also, we aim to be a resource, so we will talk a lot more about the commodities market analysis next week. But this is supposed to be a living document that is updated with the newest innovations in the fields. And so we can really start to look at not just what is out there, but which ones are available for Virgin Islanders and how we can actually implement them here. Also, we'd like to work with waste management to update their list of different locations doing things like repair, reuse, recovery, recycling centers, and create a database for these efforts. And last, outreach at different local events. Uh, we also would like to offer training on conducting waste audits for local businesses. Training in terms of the system course, a certificate I talked about previously. And finally, the HMRP has capacity training included, which is available to all government agencies. Collect and analyze data. So we are surveying the bin sites, and we will use this to identify the impact of different hazards, as well as looking for optimal locations for new sites. Also, we have plans to conduct another waste audit this time, including commercial and seasonal differences in the waste streams. And finally, engage. So we are going. We engage our UVI student population in research and internships, which we are in the process of developing in collaboration with VI Waste Management and DPNR. So thank you so much for listening today to all of the presentations. And here's my contact information. Please reach out if you have any questions. And I hope that we can work together as a community to tackle the issue of solid waste and for more sustainable management of materials. Thank you.